I'm going to commit a cardinal sin, one that a woman rarely commits in public. I'm going to tell you how much I weigh. I weigh 61 kilos. So there it is. The secret is out in the open. And let me also tell you that you will rarely hear a woman say in public, I'm perfectly happy with the way I weigh. Now that is. A couple of years ago, the Indian media went abuzz with a certain Bollywood actress's size 0 figure. She got a lot of flack for it too. The media was reporting about how she was fainting on the sets due to poor diet and how she was a very bad influence on the women and teens of this country. But I saw it in a different way. I remember back at the beginning of high school. My high school was in a convent in Mumbai, and I was a chubby girl. Not fat, but chubby and extremely happy-go-lucky. I rarely had a care in the world, and how I looked was possibly never one of them. But I also remember distinctly the first time I felt fat. Do you know how certain days from your childhood stick out with vivid clarity in your mind? You might forget a lot of those instances, you might forget a lot of those days, but there are certain days which, no matter how, will never be erased from your memory. So this was one such instance. It was in my 9th grade class, and we had a free period. And as we do in every free period, we decided we will play a game in the class. And this time we decided to play a game called Fish Pond. Has anybody played Fish Pond?
Yes.
Alright, so Fish Pond is a game where a bowl or an object which could hold something is passed around the class, and people actually write in anonymous comments about other people and put it in that bowl. And then somebody, a representative of the class, actually reads out those comments. Exciting game, right? So I was really excited about this game, and I had already written 2 comments for a boy who I thought had a really gorgeous smile, and for this girl in my class who was really friendly and sweet. And I was waiting for the comments to be read and to listen to any comment about me. And then the class monitor, he was the one who was reading the comments, started reading the comments one by one. I was at the edge of my seat, waiting to know what someone had written about me, excited. And there it was, for Archana. Alright? And this was a Hindi slogan in 2 lines. And I'm going to say it in Hindi. तुम चलती हो तो दिल धड़कता है. तुम चलती हो तो दिल धड़कता है, मेरा नहीं धरती का. Yes, you guys are very polite, but my class wasn't. They laughed a lot more loudly than this. And I actually remember the way people laughed. I remember the boy next to me collapsing with laughter, almost falling down with laughter. And you know, there are certain times when you really cannot describe how you feel in words. And this was one such moment, right? You feel an utter sense of embarrassment on one side, an utter sense of shame where heat is rising on your cheeks. But at the same time, you have to save face, right? You have to save face and you can't describe how you feel. So you laugh along and you say, ha ha ha, that is a really funny thing. How cool is that? But that day when I went home, I cried a lot because that affected me hugely. And I remember standing in front of the mirror and looking at myself. And that's the first time the mirror actually reflected back how I felt within. I was fat. I was probably ugly. And I was unlovable. During that time, around that time, my parents, especially my father, had been insisting I join and play a sport. And he kept telling me, you should play basketball, you should play basketball. And he probably said it more for fitness and health, but now his words took on a different sinister meaning. And also I had a lot of neighborhood aunties and people who have grown up in Bombay and other places in India know about these helpful neighborhood aunties who probably have an opinion about everything. So I had this one overzealous auntie in my neighborhood who had a lot of opinions about a lot of things. And she would constantly look at me and give me advice on how to lose weight and what I should do. And I remember there's another incident once when there was a birthday party in the house, and I think I was standing on a stool tying a balloon. And this auntie comes in and she immediately is really concerned. Not about me, about the stool. And she says, get off the stool, you're going to break it. And numerous such incidences that happened convinced me of what I was already feeling, that I was fat and horrible, and that's not the way to be. Slowly, I started becoming very underconfident about myself. I stopped talking to people. I stopped being friendly with everybody. I was a very chirpy, friendly girl before. But slowly, I started distancing myself from people, constantly wondering how they thought of me in their head. Were they seeing me as the fat girl, or were they seeing me for me? I stopped talking to people in school, I stopped talking to people in my neighborhood, and distanced myself. I lost a lot of friends, obviously. And before I knew it, I became a loner in school, in high school. And another incident that I remember in vivid clarity in my mind is a day when it was raining pretty heavily in the school, and we used to have our lunches in the school, inside the school, right? And when it rains, we would have our lunches inside the school building, in the corridor. And that day, we did, the whole class split up into different groups, and they were having lunch outside the classroom. And I was walking out, and I didn't want to sit with any of them because I was scared as to how they were going to talk to me. And neither did anyone invite me. So I remember walking out of the school, walking behind a wall, under a parapet, and eating my lunch all alone behind a tree. And I remember that day my lunch felt saltier than usual because I think I was crying a lot. And that is the first time it hit me very hard that I'm not being accepted for who I am, and I have to change it. I went home, and I think I decided, at the age of 16, without consulting a dietitian, without consulting anybody around, without talking to my parents, without talking to my friends, I decided that food was my enemy. And to control fat, I had to control food. I started by thinking that, I will eliminate all junk, I will control portion sizes, and it's all going to be fine. So I started by doing that. I can cut all junk, and I cut all my, reduce the portion sizes. And my teenage body responded really well. I started losing weight pretty quickly. And in the few weeks that I had lost weight, I saw a drastic change in the outlook of people around me, right? My parents were happy that I was losing weight. My neighborhood auntie was suddenly smiling a lot more. And she even told me that you look nice. People at school, I presumed, were smiling a lot more at me. And I was being accepted a lot more. And that made me think, wow, I am on the right track. This is something that I'm doing that is right. And before I knew it, cutting food and the obsession with dieting turned into an obsession or a fear of food itself. Before I knew it, I was thinking, why not just eliminate one meal? Who needs 3 meals a day anyway? Let's just cut off one meal totally. And then it became 2 meals, and then it became almost, little food here and there. In a period of 7 to 8 months, I think, I lost a lot of weight. I weighed 39 kilos. I looked like a stick. I felt devoid of any energy and any happiness. Did I achieve happiness? No. And did anyone think I looked good at 39? Absolutely not. That's the first time I think everybody around me became really concerned. My parents were absolutely concerned about what was happening. They still didn't know what was happening with me because I would cut food without their knowledge. And that, however, was a serious concern. Around that time, another very serious thing happened. I stopped getting my period for the last 4 to 5 months. And that was a huge source of concern to my mom and dad. And I remember my mom taking me to a doctor, to a gynac, to talk about it. And the first time somebody had explained the medical repercussions of what I was doing. And she said, the way you're cutting food down, your body is stopping all the secondary functions. Your body has only energy for the primary functions, like breathing, like circulation, etc. If you go on like this, you're going to probably die. That didn't scare me. So she decided another trick, and that scared me a lot. She said, if you don't stop, your hormones are going to get so messed up that you're going to grow hair everywhere. You're going to look like a man. That scared the shit out of me. I think for the first time I came back home and I realized that my brain realized that something seriously wrong was going on here. Till then it was just dieting and cutting food. But that time I realized something really serious was going on, which something I had to take notice. My parents had become seriously involved in this. And as Indian parents, as Indian families, they consulted everyone in the family about what is going on. So we spoke to our aunts and uncle in the US and abroad, etc. My aunt, a smart lady, told me that she's going to send me a book. And she did. She couriered it to me. And the book was titled, My Battle with Anorexia Nervosa. Anorexia nervosa, to be explained in clinical terms, is an eating disorder that causes people to obsess about food and weight. People with anorexia attempt to maintain a weight that's far below normal for their age and height. This disorder isn't really about food, but it's an unhealthy way to cope with emotional problems. When you have anorexia nervosa, you often equate thinness with self-worth. The entire book story read like my story, read like everything I'd been going through, read like everything that I felt. And everything that was happening to me was suddenly understood by me for the first time. people in my family, once they learned this name of anorexia nervosa, were ultra concerned. But as you know, psychiatric issues in India are not very popular. They don't talk about it, and it's still something that is a taboo. And my parents were scandalized that they had to take me to visit a shrink for the first time. Shrink is how we call it. And people in the neighborhood were, not, and it was hidden from everybody around that this was an issue which needed to be dealt with a shrink. The few psychiatrists that I visited in India were hopeless, to say the least, the people that I spoke to. They hardly focused on any kind of therapy, any kind of counseling, but they wrote prescriptions of medication. One of them gave me a medicine called Prozac, and if you're aware, Prozac is one of the most dangerous things you can put inside your body without a proper knowledge of what it does. So and my parents obviously wanted me to consume the medication, so I did. It hardly helped at all. It just made me feel more like a vegetable, more depressed, more unhappy, and there was no use. So in the next 2 months, I stopped the medication. My parents tried their own way of trying to help me out. They were really concerned. So I remember this once where dad was trying to hold my arms and my mom was trying to stuff food down my throat. She was feeding me. She would cook everything that I liked. She would make everything that I enjoyed eating. But around then, I had bought a book called, The Calorie Count of Most Food. Oh, I know it by heart. I have by hearted every calorie count that I had then. Right? There was like 1 chapati, 80 calories, 1 cup of dal, 120 calories, 1 cucumber, 20 calories. I knew it all. So every time she was feeding me a mouthful, I would calculate the number of calories going into my body. And I was terrified of food. I was terrified of getting back to a place where I was fat. I was terrified of not being accepted once again. And that was something that had to be avoided at all costs, no matter what. So anyway, this was not working out at all. And my parents decided, it was around 10th that time, when I had to choose a subject to study, and I had to choose what profession to get into. So they decided to take me out on a trip abroad to visit people, and they thought that, meeting family would cheer me up, meeting people would cheer me up. And I couldn't take my best friend along. By then I had a new best friend. Most people, when they wake up in the morning, what do you do when you wake up in the morning? Brush your teeth? I used to stand on a weighing scale. And my weighing scale was like my best friend who would tell me the rest of the day, how the rest of the day would go. Either you feel happy or you feel devastated, depending on the weighing scale. But I couldn't carry this along. I knew my dad would throw it out if I carried it in my bag. So I had to go abroad without my weighing scale. And I met a lot of family and friends. For the first time, there was no judgment. There was no opinion passed on anything. I felt a lot of warmth and happiness with people around. And I think I did let myself go a little. I ate a lot more. I didn't calculate calories. And I came back to Bombay, and the first thing I did when I reached home was obviously stand on my weighing scale. And my weighing scale decided to punish me for ignoring it all this while. And my weight went up by 2 kilos. And that is the first time I think I had a panic attack. Has anyone experienced a panic attack or heard of a panic attack? A panic attack is one where the blood rushes to your extremities and you feel sweat oozing out, you feel nauseous, you feel uncomfortable in the pit of your stomach. And just the 2 kilo increase in my weighing scale had given me that kind of panic attack. And I had to do something to get rid of it. I couldn't keep those 2 kilos on me. Every thought of, rationale behind, the entire book that I had read, talk about anorexia nervosa, talking to my relatives, went straight out of my head. The only thing that was facing me was these 2 kilos, and I had to get rid of it. And I decided that now I will work out. At 41 kilos, being already undernourished, I decided I'm going to run. I ran 6 kilometers every day. The weight was taking long to come off even then, so I decided I would skip 2,000 counts every day. So you can imagine, it was a very, very daunting, tedious task. I was a very good student in school, but my grades were getting very badly affected. Obviously, there was no energy left for anything else but to concentrate on weight. Running, skipping, fainting, not eating, that's all. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake this obsession off. My brain knew all the time that I was doing something completely wrong, something that should not have been done. But what about the fear? What about the fear that went through you? My parents used to cry, my dad used to cry, my mom used to cry saying, eat, eat. But there was this constant fear. When I see food, I would probably clam up and say, no, I can't do this to me. And around that time, I got onto the internet. The internet was kind of growing popularity in India in the 90s. And I got onto the internet and I Googled anorexia nervosa. And I stumbled onto this one support group for anorexia nervosa, luckily for me. And there were women across the globe who were talking about how it felt to battle it. the first time I started chatting on that group, there was a lady whose daughter, who was as old as me, 16, 17, was going through the same problem. And she was talking about how devastating it was for her to deal with her daughter. That's the first time I appreciated what my parents had to go through with me. And the women from all over the group, Netherlands, and there was one lady from Australia, there was one from the US, they started talking to me about what they did to battle themselves. And that worked like therapy like never before. Nobody else had that chance to sit with me and talk with me, but these women sitting in random parts of the world, and most of them were women, could counsel me and talk to me for hours about how it felt and what should I do to, get back on the track. And I decided with their help that I'm going to fight this. I'm going to fight this and I will get rid of it. By then, I had decided I was going to study psychology, obviously. Yeah. So I slowly started eating food that was non-threatening to say the least, like fruits and vegetables, because constantly you read about how low in calories they are but high in nutrition. So slowly I started pushing myself. By then my body was so exhausted. I also had developed a leg injury and I couldn't run and exercise anymore, and I was devastated about that too. So these women kept counseling me on how to stop exercising, how to stop. I would talk to them, everything that was bottled up inside, I would talk to them. And I slowly turned to food. I was also under hormonal medication for everything that was going wrong with me, and I started gaining weight slowly. The combination of not exercising, the combination of eating a little more. And what happens is when you have starved yourself for a really long time, when you even eat a little food, your body starts storing it as fat. That's probably why crash diets never work. So that's exactly what started happening. I started gaining weight. And in the next few months, I think I had reached a normal level of weight. My hormones got sorted out. Everything else physically got sorted out, but mentally I was still extremely terrified of how people would accept me because I was growing fat. And I was back to a slightly chubbier version of me in the next 1 or 2 years. And that's when I had to study psychology, and I didn't want to study in Mumbai because although Mumbai is a diverse nation of acceptance, it had not given my fat body the acceptance of being here. And so my parents decided to send me to the US to study. And I got into the University of Georgia, got into psychology, but there was a visa issue, so I had to come back. But studying in Mumbai was definitely unacceptable to me. Meeting the friends who had criticized me was unacceptable to me. So I moved to Chennai, where my grandparents were, and I started studying in a university there. The first day I went to college, I was terrified. Oh my God, I'm going to meet new people here again, new friends here again, and they're all going to judge me for being fat, and I'm going to feel all of those same pangs that I felt. In the first week, something miraculous happened. A girl in my college, and it was a girls' college, a girl in my college walked to me with a rose in her hand, and she gave me the rose and she said, you're really pretty. Are you from Bombay? And for the first time in the last 2 years then, somebody had called me pretty. Maybe Chennai is just more accepting of curvier women. I think that's the case. The South likes curvier women by far. But anyway, I think from then on, my journey transformed. I found new friends. I found a lot of people, a lot of acceptance, a lot of warmth. I started becoming my old chirpier self. And I was studying something that delighted me. I was studying psychology. And all of that acted like a drug and a combination of happiness. And I was, before I knew it, back to my normal self. I remember in the final exams in psychology, one of the questions in brief was, describe in brief the symptoms of anorexia nervosa. I can safely say I aced that one. I have a psychology university rank to prove for what I did. And by then, everything was sorted out. I think today, I can proudly say that I have a very healthy equation with my body and with weight, and it doesn't bother me anymore. Of course, I've just learned to be a lot more sensitive and a lot more empathic of everybody around. The actress who was criticized, the Bollywood actress who was criticized for once being size 0, was also criticized for being fat, if you remember. The media and people are sometimes hypocritical. They will say contradictory things. They will let you doubt yourself. And I learned in this journey of mine that the only thing that will save you is self-acceptance and empathy towards yourself. I want to end with one quote that I value the most in my life. It's a quote by Chris Jamie. It talks about, if a person can't see beauty in the world, it's because the world never saw beauty in that person. Thank you.